It's only an 80-page book, should be all right. I was reading this morning and I thought, I'll share it with you. It's a psalm, and it's one of the Psalms of Ascent. So the special songs towards the end of the book of Psalms, where they're all about going up, which is really important, isn't it? Yeah, that we're going up. Not going down, we're going up. And these would have been, after Passover, when Jesus went to the Mount of Olives, and it said that they went off singing together, him and the disciples. That's the traditional place where they would sing these songs of ascent. And if you've never or ever been to Jerusalem, you're always going up because it's on a hill. So the only way to get there is to go up. So this is a song of ascent. This is Psalm 126. When the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we thought we were dreaming. Can you imagine that? The Lord restoring the fortunes of Zion. Our mouths were full of laughter and our tongues shouted for joy. Among the nations it was said, God has done great things for them. God has indeed done great things with us, and we are overjoyed. Return our people from exile, Lord. Fill the streams in the desert with your water. Those who sow in tears will reap with cries of joy. He who goes out weeping will come back carrying a sack of seed, will come home with cries of joy as he carries the sheaves of grain. So it's a picture of bounty and joy and fullness, and because the Lord has restored the fortunes of Zion. Don't need Bible anymore. Need it every day, every second. So, it's exciting that, isn't it, to think, we are going up. God is calling us up. And the words there in Hebrew are used in so many other circumstances. I won't get into all of that, but it's all about going up. We are being called to go up, not to go down, but to go up. It is interesting, just one aside, that Jesus, when he was in the upper room, well, obviously he had to come down because he was in the upper room, but from there he did go down into the valley of death, of hell, effectively. It was the rubbish dump of Jerusalem. Then he went up to the Mount of Olives. But they sang songs of ascent all the way. So I just thought we'd start with a song of ascent, because I think we're in a place as a fellowship, as a group of people, where there is an excitement. There's a real potential, because we can hear God's voice saying, we're going up. And we need to follow his voice that will take us up. So, in effect, this is part 3 of 3. Because the last 3 weeks we've been reflecting on the week of prayer and fasting. So the first thing was the week of prayer and fasting, which again was a really good thing to do. We went around different communities, including Millen, but some of the other villages around and about, and we prayed for each place, and we asked that God would bless them, but we were also asking for God's heart. What's God's heart for Kirksands, and what's God's heart for Silecroft, etc., etc. Bootle and Thwaites was the other one that thought I wouldn't remember them. Didn't write them down. And what is God's heart for Millen? When I've done the preamble, which could take a while, I told you it's only 80 pages. 73 of them are preamble. Now, I'm going to bring some things that I think God has got on his heart for Millen and for us as God's people in Millen. But first, let's have a quick review. So I won't go into all of the detail, but we did have a really good time. It was good going around prayer walking, praying, praising God in those different places, and just listening to his heart. And that's a key thing. We need to listen to the heart of God. We need to listen for the heart of God. What is he saying? Then I'm going to come to Helen first, because as I thought about it, that was the way round. But both what Helen and Debbie said were really good and part of this going up. So Helen, as far as I can remember, hopefully you recognise what I'm going to say. Oh yeah, I think I said it. It was all about what's in a name.
I remember that bit.
Oh, good. So it was all about what's in a name, and basically Helen did two really good things. She
Only two?
wait for it.
Oh, okay.
One of them was she told us all the names of, or not all, loads of names of God in the Bible, and apparently there are, I don't know, hundreds or over 100 yet. So there's plenty of names of God, and they're really important because they tell us God's character, and we're going to look at one or two of them later on. But that is really important because we can't know God without knowing his name. God is a bit like impersonal, but Yahweh, the breath of life, who breathed life into Adam right at the beginning, or Jesus, Yeshua, the salvation of God. Now we're talking, we're getting a feel of the character of God. So we got a really good feel of the need to know the names of God. But then Helen, the other big thing that Helen told us was that he knows us by name. So he doesn't just say, "Oi, Thingy on the back row." He says, "Malaya," or Leslie, or Elizabeth, or Terry. He knows us by name, and he has called us by name because he knows our character as well. Just as his names tell us about his character, he knows our character. And to be honest, that's without those two things. When you first meet someone, hello, I'm Dave. Blah, 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 hello, I'm Peter. Blah, blah. Now we've got the beginnings of a relationship because now we know each other's names, and then we share a little bit more and we learn about the character behind those names. Now we've got the start of a relationship. So for me, it was, that was really important that we just think about this is all about ultimately a one-to-one relationship where he knows our name and we know his many names, and he knows our character and we know his amazing, varied, splendid, all the words that our language doesn't really cope with. His character, amazing. And again, just one quick aside, but at the end, when we meet God again face to face in heaven, it says in Revelation that he's got another name for us, and he'll write it on a white stone and he'll give it to Enid and say, you've been Enid all of your life, but your name is, I don't know what it is. That's just for you and God. But it'll be one of those names that will fire us up and melt us down, because it's going to be, it'll have our character written all over it, and it'll show us that God knows who we are. So that was what I got from Helen. After a bit of filtering, sifting, but no, that was great. Debbie, what I heard from Debbie's was all about hearing and seeing from God, which again was really exciting because, to be honest, unless we hear or see from God, we're just walking around like blind men and women, aren't we? We need to see what God is seeing. And I was also excited by her title, which was Visions, Prophecy and Dreams. I thought, wow, revolutionary. That's good, scary. Because as many of you know, I have a mate, Nick. He has dreams all the time. And I just sit there going, how did he even have that dream? 2, how does he remember it? And I don't have dreams like that, although I did last week, which I'll tell you about later on. But visions, prophecies and dreams, we can just see things like we see anything else, or we can kind of see it in our imagining. But God can actually send us visions in word or in picture, in sound, I guess, in the form of a prophecy. But even dreams, when we're asleep, He can also put things into us. And then Debbie went on to say, because there is one spirit. I might have a dream that's to do with my spirit. I don't know, fancy driving a Formula One racing car. That's my dream. It's not God's dream. That's to do with my spirit. It isn't. I wouldn't fancy that at all. I'd probably be sick. But we need to know God's dreams, don't we? We need to know God's visions. We need to hear from Him. And that is how we hear, because there is one Spirit. And the one Spirit operates in each and every one of us. And can operate in us at any time. And I pray even now that Jean is having a dream. Because God can work all of the time with us. So that, I think, is really exciting. That's what, if we ever wonder, like when musicians get together and they tune up, and they'll agree what they're going to tune to. They'll tune to the guitar or middle C, or don't ask me how they do it because I'm a drummer, I just hit things. But they tune to something. Well, we're tuned to the Holy Spirit. That's what brings us into tune. That's what gives us our harmony. That's what brings us together. And then Debbie went on to tell us about a vision, a picture that she'd had from God about Milam. And it was, again, really good how she did it, because she didn't just tell us, she actually brought the pictures and showed us. And it's like, I can see exactly what you're talking about now, because you've shown us a picture. And again, I think that's really important, that this is part of why we're here, to hear from God and then paint that picture for each other and everybody else. I'll have to put my glasses on to see if there's Yes, we can all hear from God through this one Spirit, and then we can share with each other. And God has given us these pictures, and as I say, Debbie's was an exciting picture, and I've heard other pictures. I won't rehearse all of them, because in a way the people who've had those pictures should come and tell you the pictures they've had from God, just as if any of you have a picture from God about this fellowship or this town or whatever, share it, because we need to test it, we need to think about it. And the more I've thought a lot about Debbie's prayer vision, and I've prayed about it, and it's like, so what are we going to do with that? Because that's the next thing. These aren't like, there's lots of pictures on the wall here. It's not that kind of picture. I have got about 2,000 pictures on my phone. I will probably never see them again, and you definitely won't see them, because they're of my family and things like that. Not that kind of picture. God gives us pictures to do something with. We need to do something with them. And one of them is to show them to other people and say, this is what I think God is saying. So, I've got 3 sets of 4 now. I know you're supposed to have 3-point sermon, but I kind of multiplied it by 4, so I've got 3 sets of 4. I've got 4 questions, 4 pictures for Milam, and 4 pictures for the church. So here's the 4 questions, and these aren't original to me. I borrowed them from a preacher friend called Howard Morgan, and he quite often uses these, and he uses them to say to people exactly what I've just said. Right, now we've heard from God, what are we going to do with it? So here's the 4 questions, and they're not complicated, but I do need my glasses. So the first question is, what are you hearing or seeing from God? And that's a question to each and every one of us. What are you hearing or seeing from God? What are you getting from God at the moment? When you read your Bible, when you're walking by the sea, whatever, what are you hearing and seeing from God? What do you understand by it? I'll go through the questions and I'll just revisit them. So what do you understand by it? I don't know about you, but I see and hear a lot of things, and I think, that sounds really interesting. I haven't got a clue what it means, but it sounds really interesting. Number 3, this is my version of it. So what? So what are you going to do? Because if there isn't a so what question, then everything just stays on the page and the pictures stay in the frame. So what? So what are you going to do? And then the fourth question is, how can anyone help? Because we're in this together. Okay, so just to go back very briefly, what are you hearing or seeing from God? Jesus said, I only do what I see the Father doing. So he must have been seeing God the Father doing something to then do it. And that's the model for us. So we should be looking at Jesus to see what he's doing, and then we do that. I only do what I see the Father doing. My sheep hear my voice. And then Jesus says, follow me. So whatever we see him doing, and whatever we hear him explaining, talking about, whatever, follow me. This is basic, isn't it? This is Christianity 101. Follow me. That's, it is as simple as that. But sometimes we do struggle with sort of, we understand by it. Like, in one way, Debbie's picture of this big fat cloud, correct me if I'm getting it wrong or miss anything out, but this big fat dark cloud sitting over Millham, getting in the way, if you like. What is that about? And Debbie said, that she understood it to be a kind of self-comfort. Is that right? That a lot of people, it's like they've wrapped a self-comfort around themselves. And actually that is what's getting between them and hearing God, who is in the clear heavens above, but this cloud is in between. But then we need to dig a bit deeper. In Zechariah 12, the prophet Zechariah must be pretty good if he's called a prophet and he gets his own book. He's good, isn't he? Mm-hmm. But the angel shows him a picture, and Zechariah, I can describe that picture, and he describes this picture. And then the angel says to him, so what does it mean, O prophet of God? And do you know what Zechariah says? He's honest, and he says, I don't know. I don't know what it means. I can tell you what the picture is, but I don't know what it means. Now Debbie, she has got some understanding of the picture that she had, but together maybe we need to explore the picture a little bit more and see what else we can find in it together. Not to take away from Debbie's picture, but to add more layers of meaning to it. Because, for example, like I can see you guys, but I can't see what's behind me, but you can. Together we're going to see a lot more than we will see individually. And again, just as a bit of an aside, I don't know if you've ever talked to heroin addicts. Some of you will have. Anyway, I was talking to this guy who'd actually just overdosed, and it took him an hour or two to come round. And I was saying to him, what does it feel like? Because I don't want to find out for myself. Why do you do it? What does it feel like? And he said, when you push the needle, it is like a massive ball of cotton wool is just enveloping you, and you just feel so comfortable. Then you feel sick. Then you have withdrawal. Then you want some more. But for a short while, it's like a massive ball of cotton wool is wrapped around you, and you just sink into it, and you don't care about anything. Now, maybe that's a little bit of this big fluffy cloud that is sat over Millham, that people have enveloped themselves in, things like that just make them feel like they're inside a big ball of cotton wool. But Zechariah said, what does it mean? And we need to find out together. We need to look at these things. And one of the things, and I know we're a harmonious, peaceful people, but one of the things is, again, it's a Jewish concept called midrash, but it basically means debate or even argue. And what they would do is they would go and listen to someone like me who'd read the Bible, and this is what I've read in the Bible. And then they would go to another place called the House of Midrash, the House of Debate, and they would pull it about and say, right, let's figure out what that means. What is this vision that Debbie's given us? What does it mean? What should we do with it? Because on the face of it, there's nothing we can do with it. We can all, go down there with blankets and try and blow this non-existent, that we can't see, cloud away. But we need to pray, don't we? We need to do something in prayer. We need to do something in the Spirit. So third again, so what? What are we going to do about it? The whole point is that we understand what God's showing us so we can do something about it. That is really important. Right at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, which is probably one of the best preaches ever, maybe apart from the Road to Emmaus, which isn't recorded, so we don't know, but I think that must have been a pretty brilliant preach by Jesus. But the Sermon on the Mount, right at the end of it, Jesus said, well, if you've heard my words and you do something about it, then you're like a man who builds on solid rock. But if you hear my words and do nothing, you might as well be building on sand, because the rain will come and it will wash it all away. And I think I've already said the fourth one. How can we help? We need to help each other. That doesn't mean to say that, my part of the vision is the same as your part of the vision, but there might be something I can do to help you. Or there might be something you can do to help me. But we're in this together. And we talk about fellowship. It was interesting, a couple of weeks ago I went down to Plymouth and I went sailing with my brother-in-law. And he mainly takes me sailing to scare me, because I find it scary. And he loves it, when the boat goes over and I'm going, is it all right, Dave? Anyway, he didn't scare me too much. But we were in fellowship. We were fellows in the same ship. That's what fellowship is about. We're in the same boat together. Whether it's being tossed about on Galilee or with my brother-in-law down in Plymouth, we're in the same boat together. That's where God has placed us. So on that note, I wonder if we could sing a song that we have sung before. And I really want you to just look and listen, look at the words and just think about them a bit. What do they mean? Because some songs we sing directly to God, don't we? Some songs we sing to each other about God. But I think this is a song that we sing to each other. So, if you feel in the mood, Terry, you could sing it to Elizabeth with ice. Elizabeth's got a nice voice. She could sing it to you. But look at the words, please.
Let me be as Christ to you. Pray that I may have the grace to let you be my servant. We are pilgrims on a journey.
Jason and Debbie. So here's a picture of fellowship, isn't it? Yeah, it's a picture of love one another. It's a picture of encourage one another. But it's also a picture of Christ, because he was the servant king. You know, he was always going to be wearing a crown, even when you couldn't see it. But he was always at someone's feet, washing them, or dishing out the bread at the mealtime, or whatever. He was the servant king, and that's the model for us. And I did think to go through. Well, was anyone struck by any particular sentence or phrase from there?
Let me hold the Christ light for you,
Yeah,
because you need to see what you're doing.
yeah,
And although it seems that you're not doing anything, you are, because you're holding the light.
yeah. That was one that jumped out. There were three. Well, one was the servant one. That, because we all have times, don't we, where maybe it's a bit darker than it ought to be, or we're just not quite sure. And you need someone to come and hold, not just a torch or a light, but to hold the Christ light for you that sheds light. What's your name meaning, Helen?
Means light or
Ah.
torch.
Right. Well, we've got a light shower here. Who? So yeah, I will hold the Christ light. Yeah, and I have certainly needed people to come at times to me and hold the Christ light when I'm like, I don't know what to do, or I'm like annoyed with stuff or whatever it might be, and then a good friend will just come and hold the Christ light. And a good friend, I say, it might even be someone I don't know, still a good friend if they're holding the Christ light for me. Any other phrases that struck people from the song?
Let me. That phrase, let me, because it's not aimed at the person who's trying to do something. It's about the recipient.
Yeah,
And sometimes we wear a mask that says everything's fine. We've got it all together. We're going on great. And in actual fact, that's not true. But our pride stops us from saying to a friend or whoever, I need the Christ light.
yeah,
Yeah. And sometimes I think we have to remember that to be part of a fellowship, you have to be both the giver and the recipient.
and the receiver. Which is where it starts, doesn't it? Yeah, let me be your servant, and pray I might have the grace to let you be my servant too. The other one that phrase that struck me, and it's one of those songs that you'll hear it differently at different times, but I will weep when you are weeping. I remember a number of stories, but I remember one time that I went to visit a family because this lad worked in my centre and he'd been stabbed to death. It was awful, it was tragic, and he was just trying to help someone. It was one of these typical stories where he was trying to help someone else who was being attacked, and the attacker turned on him. And I went to visit his mum, and I just thought, I haven't got a clue what to do. And so I held her hand, and she cried, and I cried. And it's like, wasn't much else needed to be done really, because we'd said all of the other stuff. I knew her well, but in that moment, just to weep with someone when they are weeping. So, there's 4 questions. It's all about, we can do this on our own, but actually, if we want to do it properly, we're called individually, but we're called to be part of a body. And it doesn't talk about lone rangers in the Bible, it talks about the body of Christ. So here's 4 pictures that I see for Milham, and then 4 pictures for the church. And the first picture for Milham actually is to do with one of his names. So again, it was prompted by something that Helen was talking about. I don't say Jehovah, I'll say Adonai Roy. But this is in Genesis, Hagar has had the baby Ishmael. Isaac's now coming along, and we've got this dispute. 2 mums, 2 children. Something's got to give. And what gave was Hagar was sent out into the wilderness. So actually, Hagar is sat in the middle of the wilderness, in the Negev desert, basically waiting to die, and just crying out to God. Literally, she is waiting to die. And God comes to her and he says, I am Adonai Roi. I am the God who sees you. Yeah, all right, your son isn't the bloodline that we're following. And all right, you've did something that perhaps in other circumstances you shouldn't have done. But I see you, Hagar. And I still have plans for you. Yeah, you're not written off. It's just a change of direction. But I see you. So the first thing that I see from God for Milam is just for Milam to understand or to hear and believe that God sees them. I see you, Milam. You might be, as I keep jokingly saying to people, at the ends of the earth. How do you get to Milam? Well, you go up the M6, turn left, and when you run out of land, there's Milam. We're at the ends of the earth here. But I see you, Milam, is what God is saying. And again, I've got this from when we've been up on the Slaggy and we've been praying or singing over Israel. And it's a picture, again, of Jesus. And he's on the Mount of Olives again, but on a previous occasion. And he's looking over at Jerusalem, because you look across the valley from the Mount of Olives to Jerusalem. And he says, oh, Jerusalem, how I have longed to gather you like a mother hen gathers her chicks. And on the Mount of Olives, there's actually a church there. And it's called, well, people call it different names, but Mother Hen is one. And when you go in, the altar has got all of these pictures on it of a mother hen gathering her chicks. But the actual church itself, when you go out, and you do have to sort of step back and have a look at it, it's in the shape of a teardrop, because Jesus is crying. He's weeping over Jerusalem, and he's saying what I've just said, oh Jerusalem. So I think the second thing that I hear God saying to Milam is, oh Milam, how I have longed to gather you like a mother hen gathers her chicks. Now if you read that passage, that's a beautiful picture, isn't it? But then Jesus says, but you wouldn't have any of it. And we have to say that as well, as he said to Jerusalem, I have longed to gather you, but you wouldn't have any of it. And they need to know that there's this beautiful offer that at the moment they have rejected. The third picture is to do with, again, I don't know how many of you know this, but I think it was back in 1967, Milam held a funeral for, a town-wide funeral, and they paraded a coffin through the streets. And it was a big affair, and all the leaders and the important people got involved. And it was a funeral for the town, because the ironworks had closed. And they were basically saying, and I think particularly the women of the town apparently were saying, this is a dead town. So I think the third thing that God's saying to Milam is, I want to bless you, even though you have cursed yourself. You've cursed yourself by saying you are dead and there'll be no more life. But I want to bless you, Milam, because that is my heart. God's heart is to bless. And so the fourth picture is from Deuteronomy. And it was when and again, God paints these big pictures. He doesn't do little things you can put on the wall. He actually got all of Israel to stand between these two mountains. Now, if I was a real scholar, I'd remember their names. But they've gone out on my head. But he stood all of Israel between these two mountains. And he said, and he described one mountain. And this is the mountain of blessings. And he talks all about what blessings are and what that would mean. And then this, Gerizim is one of them. It's coming back to me, Mount Gerizim. And this one is the mountain of curses. And they spent, I imagine, a whole day with Moses on God's behalf, spelling out the blessings and the curse. And then he said to Israel, which I believe he says to all of us and has said to us and says to Milam, so choose this day. But I recommend you choose life. Choose blessings, choose life. Don't choose the curses and choose death as you have done in the past. Choose life. But for me, those are 4 things that I believe God is saying to Milam, as he will say to lots of towns. And the thing is that we then, as the people in Milam, need to unpick this and think about, so how do we actually present that picture and what does it look like on the ground? Because that's the real task. What does it look like? So here's the 4 things that I believe God is saying to Milam, amongst other things. You'll hear other things. I see you, Milam, and I have longed to gather you like a mother hen gathers her chicks. But you wouldn't have any of it, and you've cursed yourself. But my heart is to bless. I want to bless you. So choose life. So there's 4 things for Milam. And I'm sure, I go to the Baptist church on a Tuesday to do food bank, and Rachel, because she's like jazzy, she has a flip chart. I could have brought a flip chart, couldn't I? Say, what are you hearing from God for Milam? Let's put it on a flip chart. Let's get the messages up here. But there's another bit where I think God is saying, so now you know my heart, you know my spirit, but you know what? I need some hands and feet. So where's my body? I need my body to join to this heart, to this spirit, to be my hands and feet. And I know that you know this, and I know that we, I'm not saying we have done nothing, but God's heart is saying it needs hands and feet. So here's 4 things. That was the first really, 4 things to the church. If we listen to God's heart, it'll be up on the slaggy weeping over Milam. It'll be saying, I want to bless you, but so far you haven't let me do that. How can I bless you? So the Spirit of God, the heart of God, the first thing is saying, I need some hands and feet, O body of Christ. Will you be my hands and feet? Another picture that a number of people had, I was part of, and they weren't all together, but they were all from Ezekiel 3 and Ezekiel 33. Ezekiel 3 is kind of where God is commissioning the prophet Ezekiel, and you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And then Ezekiel 33 is where he details this particular task that is given to Ezekiel. And what he says is, get up on that hill, and actually when you read it, some of it is quite descriptive of the slaggy up above Milam, and blow your trumpets and wake people up. And who is the trumpet waking people? Who are the people that are being woken up? Us. Because they're already asleep, most of the town, because they've got this blanket around them that Debbie talked about. So first of all, God's wanting to wake us up. Wake up, O sleeper. Take up the mantle for which I have called you. Be my hands and feet. And, bring these words and other words that you hear from my heart to this town of Milam. So first of all, it's a wake-up call to us. Then the third thing is, and again, because I brought this on the Friday when we were sat in here and we were talking about Milam. In John 7, Jesus is at the Feast of Tabernacles, and it is the last day. They call it the great day of the great feast. So it's wild at the temple. Honestly, it's wild. If you've ever seen these straight-laced Jews with their ringlets and their black and white clothes, they go bonkers. It's you wouldn't believe it. They're going bonkers, and in the middle of all of that, Jesus stands up and he says, "Whoever believes in me shall have rivers of Rivers of living Good job I'm not getting married, isn't it? Rivers of living water flow from outside. We are little portable water carriers, but we're carrying the water of the Holy Spirit. We're carrying God's blessing, God's anointing. That's what it is. Because as you read on, the river brings life wherever it goes. You know, trees will grow up on its banks. It'll have fruit for people to eat from, and the leaves are for the healing of the nations. It's all there in Ezekiel and in Revelations. But that is what we're being called to do, is to carry this water that Jesus has given us, that God has given us, the fountain of living water, and carry it to this dry and dusty land, which is Millom and Rochdale and lots of other places. I say Rochdale because that's where I used to live. There's another picture though about wells. This is a big number 3, isn't it? Sorry, I said some of them. Anyway, this is still number 3. So a big picture about wells is in Genesis 26, and it's where Isaac has got all of these. He's got literally thousands of sheep, and he hasn't got enough water. So he goes out a bit further. He branches out, and he's trying to get more water sources. And in a desert, that's a pretty difficult thing to do. And what he finds is that the enemy, however you want to define that, it's the Philistines there, or the shepherds of Gerar, have blocked all the wells up. They've chucked stones in them, and they put rubbish in them, and who knows what they put in them. Nuclear waste, perhaps, I don't know. But they've messed the wells up, so you can no longer get good, clean water. And what Isaac is told to do, and in a lot of Bibles, it is the chapter heading. God says to Isaac, "Redig the wells again of your father." And I think this is a word to the church as well. There are untapped wells in Millom. There are untapped springs and rivers in this room. And God is saying, redig again the wells. We need to see it flow, because there's a thirsty world out there, and they need basically the living water to come and bring life and healing and etc., etc. And the fourth thing, therefore, is, again, really, I've kind of said it in other ways, but, I think God is saying to us, as he has said to his people many times over, I need you to stand in the gap between me and Millom. I need you to stand in the gap to connect these amazing resources that are heavenly to this desert where people are literally dying because they haven't got what they need. And I think a key to that standing in the gap is being his people. And then that phrase, or that well-known verse, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves. Now this doesn't mean that we have to go around sackcloth and ashes. It basically, and turn from their wicked ways. The wicked ways are just saying, I'm going to do it my way. That's all the wicked ways. Turn it into God. Being humble is saying, I'm going to turn from doing it my way, and I'm going to come back and do it your way. If my people, then, when I hear that and I see that, then I will turn and I will bring you back as my people, and I will heal your land. And, we look at the news every day. The next thing to be scared of is a heat wave tomorrow. We all need to be scared of that. The government wants us to be scared of everything. But God is saying, you're my people. We live in a land, in a world that needs healing. If my people, then I will heal the land. So, I think I might have snuck a few halves into my 4 for the church. So it might have been 5.5, but there was a kind of a theme there. But that's what I feel God is saying. And we need to do something with it. Just as when you tell someone about Christ, they need to do something with it. Now they might say, not today, thanks, see ya. Well, they've done something with it. Or, as God's people, we need to do something with it, which is, so, is that God's word for us? What is it saying? Back to those 4 questions. What do we understand by it? What are we going to do? And how can we help?